Everybody's looking for that pill that does what exercise does. It's never going to happen. I'm going to tell you that right now, not happening. But we can do things to, to try to get closer to that. And that's where calorie restriction, intermittent fasting, ketogenic diet, all those things are trying to replicate exercise and good nutrition. When I do these things to get people feeling better, and I use ketones to get them to a state of, wow, I need to know more. Well, that's when you can really engage these people to come back and really focus on exercise and really focus on nutrition. And then you've got a really great starting point for the rest of their life. And very few of those people deviate from that path once you get them there. That's really the most amazing and most satisfying thing for me when I see that transformation, and they become the zealots. And they're out there telling everybody, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this. That's really a privilege to be part of that.
Welcome back to another show brought to you by our very own Myoscience Nutrition. So I don't need to tell you, it's pretty hot in a lot of cities. Some cities recording triple-digit temperatures. So if you're exercising outdoors, if you're eating a low-carb ketogenic style diet, if you're doing any sort of intermittent fasting or time-restricted feeding, you really need to double down on your electrolytes. Why? Because your insulin and glucose levels are low, which means that you're probably excreting more electrolytes in your sweat than the average person who's eating a high-carb style diet. So we have this new great bundle to help you replenish your lost electrolytes and also support a lot of other aspects related to health, including fostering deep restorative sleep. This bundle has myo-inositol, it has magnesium, it has taurine. Taurine is a really important but yet under-recognized player involved in electrolyte balance. Also, the magnesium forms are in their most bioavailable forms that are not going to just cause you to have a bowel movement. They're actually going to be absorbed. And a really great tasting, a little stevia sweetened drink that you can put in a wine glass. It's almost like a mocktail. I put some red mineral salt in there and swish it around in a post-workout situation. When your cortisol and adrenaline is high, it's a nice way to unwind. We've had a lot of great customer feedback with people that are doing fasting or exercise and getting cramps and getting woken up in the middle of the night. Just 1 or 2 scoops in a wine glass with some sea salt and a little DIY electrolyte caps, and they're not getting those cramps and they're sleeping better. So you too can support your body's electrolyte balance and sleep better and take that mental edge off and with all the uncertainty in the world by going over to myoscience.com. That's Myoscience with an X. That's MYOXCIENCE.com. MYOXCIENCE.com. And please use the coupon code HIH at checkout. I'll put links below. And friends, by the way, today's episode with Dr. William Seeds is amazing. I want to thank Frank Yosa over at Ketone Aid. I use his ketone ester. It's an amazing formulation. Frequently before I do videos like this, although I didn't take it today, but prior to the interview that I did with Dr. William Seeds, I love their product. I'll put links below as well to that. I think it's great for taking taking the mental cobwebs out is what the words that I'm looking for. But it has a lot of great properties as well for exercise and post-concussion syndrome. I mean, there's a lot of great attributes. So I want to thank Frank for this introduction. Dr. William is amazing. I would strongly suggest that you listen to the very end because we start to dive into posterior chain exercises and the importance of squatting and deadlift and muscle throughout lifespan and its health benefits. So show notes are going to be linked below and also links to Dr. Seed's website. He's been an orthopedic surgeon for north of 25 years. In fact, prior to our interview that you're about to listen to, he had already completed 5 surgeries that day. I mean, it's amazing. The guy's a rock star. He's in his late 50s. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you do, please hit that like button. You can take a screenshot and share this over on Instagram as an Instagram story. I would love to know your feedback. Please leave a comment below. And if you know someone that might resonate with this message, please share this with them. And hope you enjoy the episode, and let's cut to it with Dr. William Seeds. So Frank Yosa at Ketone Aid introduced us, and we can just kind of launch with this. Are you involved in the clinical trial that they're doing, or?
Well, I did the original paper with a couple of the biochemists from the Beach Lab that we just wrote, and we're waiting for publication on metabolic therapy for the COVID. And we're working on a couple clinical trials, multiple clinical trials, setting them up right now for what we think is a major step forward in just a nutritional therapy that can have dramatic effects. And it's a shame, that people just don't know what's out there and what is, because it's not a pharmaceutical, nobody knows about it. And it's a tremendous energy source that's right there that can make tremendous differences. And in the medical world of the docs that are familiar, with these type of modalities they're burning it up with helping patients post-COVID, and actually, in the state of where respiratory status is an issue, we can make dramatic changes very quickly. So it's very exciting. As soon as this really gets out and things flush out, it's a game changer for everyone.
I would love to unpack some of the mechanisms and talk about some of the reasons why you guys wrote that paper and the impetus to conduct some of these clinical trials. But maybe first, as an orthopedic surgeon, you've been doing this for 25 years. Dr. Seeds, how did you first get interested in the ketogenic diet, and how do you use this in your clinical practice at present, or do you?
I use it. So I think the best way for me to approach that is to tell you that I have been, my background is cellular metabolism and the pathophysiology of the cell and everything about it. And that has given me a totally different viewpoint of looking at how we heal the body. And as an orthopedist, we, in my field, we're I think very blessed with a tremendous amount of really talented surgeons all over the U.S. that are trained, and we all come out of, I think, very good training programs. And we're taught to do things mechanically and fix things mechanically. And I've taken that kind of a step to where you got to look inside the cell, and the key to any type of repair, whether it's orthopedics or injury or infection, it's all about cell efficiency. And it's, what are you doing to monopolize the efficiency of the cell? And the amazing thing is the cell knows how to do everything. And it's all about that cell making the right substrate choice, whether it's glucose, fatty acids, amino acids. It knows how to have that metabolic flexibility to utilize those substrates and do what's best for the cell. So if you understand that, you can really go a long way with utilizing the understanding of that and implementing it in every part of medicine and in what we do. And so, I think we've advanced a lot from where we came from, looking at intermittent fasting as that started out in the oncology world, where we would fast. We knew if we could fast somebody for 72 hours, we could upregulate stem cell rejuvenation, and we could do a lot to make a surgery go tremendously well in metabolically disadvantaged patients. It was just a very hard thing to get a patient into that 72-hour fasting regimen, and you weren't successful all the time with that. Mm-hmm. And we took that, and we played with it. And I'm also on the sports medicine side of this equation too, and we've utilized intermittent fasting in a way to also work on tissue healing and brain metabolism and all the issues of improving cell efficiency. So we've known about, people that are in this type of world, that are looking at the literature and looking at the what has been written in from the science side. Well, I've always been enamored by Dr. Veach's work in lipids and ketones. And he's, God rest his soul, he and his crew in his lab, I think, did the most amazing things I've ever seen in looking at what you can really do with ketones and how you can change metabolism instantly, because of it's it's an energy source that the cell wants and requires without really utilizing too much energy to use it. And his work was just been tremendous in moving forward to a point of where we now have these ketone esters available as a nutritional supplement, which is mind-boggling because and it's how it should be, but to have something available like this, where you can kind of sidestep all of those, you know, the intermittent fasting, the ketogenic diet, you can actually get somebody into ketosis within a matter of less than a minute, you know, with these esters. And that is a tremendous tool if you know how to use it in enhancing cell efficiency. And it's really what it comes down to. It's, if you can enhance cell efficiency and give that cell back all of the genetic mechanisms, it knows what to do. So it's not like you're introducing a molecule to change the cell or to alter the genomics of the cell. You're actually giving the cell something that it intelligently can make the decisions it's supposed to make, because we're not that smart yet, right? But the cell is. So that's kind of my short answer of what you just asked. It's really putting all those things together. And let me tell you, that makes a tremendous difference when you're working on world-class athletes on the sports side, where you can't afford to have fibrotic growth after surgery. You want maximal efficiency all the way through your protocols. But it's the same thing with a 50-year-old weekend warrior that hurts his knee and still wants an ACL and wants to get back out there and play softball or play soccer with his kids. It's no different. And when you have the ability to manipulate the efficiency of the cell to its advantage, game over. It's and that's been it's been the impetus, I think, of really I think you're seeing a tremendous surge of understanding in the nutritional world now of this utilization of ketones and what you can do from all the way from the trainer to the strength coach to the nutritionist to the physician to the physical therapist. I mean, I think it's wonderful when you have a tool that everybody can utilize, and because we're all looking to do the same thing, and that's optimized cell efficiency. So there you go.
Optimize cell efficiency and also kind of hasten recovery. And when the pandemic first started and we started to see these disparate outcomes in people with metabolic insensitivities, metabolic, inflexibility is the word I was trying to find, how the outcomes were a little bit different. I was diving into some of the research in orthopedics and outcomes and post-surgical infections, and being obese and metabolically inflexible it kept coming up, even post-vaccine antibody rises in people that are overweight and so forth. And so as a surgeon and many other surgeons throughout the world, I think obviously would be pretty interested in hoping that their patients can recover quickly, not have complications from an infection. So it's really interesting that this is not being talked about more. I mean, we don't hear much about the post-surgical window or even the pre-surgical planning. So I think it's really exciting, and it leads it, I mean, in my eyes, as a non-physician, it lends itself to being much more credible coming from you, from a surgeon, and because you see these people in the recovery and working with athletes. So I want to commend you for sharing that. But so do you advise people do fasting before surgery? And then what would the intermittent fasting protocol look like? Say you get your knee scoped or you get your shoulder worked on. Because, we know that nutrients help with recovery and amino acids and all that, but then you talked about how you use intermittent fasting for athletes. So how does this look like on a practical level, or is it really custom tailored to the individual?
Well, again, it all depends on, those are great questions, Mike, and they all have an answer. It really depends on when you get the patient, what is your focus of at that, in that time frame? I mean, do you, ideally, if you have time, for instance, let's take a patient that maybe will come in that you haven't been treating in the past, that has an ACL injury, and you have, we do things, we just don't jump into surgery with those patients because we need to improve range of motion, do all kinds of things to get the knee less inflamed. And these mechanisms of getting somebody into an intermittent fasting protocol can really help you in working on all of those mechanisms that I've stated there, and also on working in the on the aspects of cell efficiency, where we could get into this later, but all of your athletes, I'm going to tell you right now, are all overtrained, and they all have some imbalance in their immune system, and they look like the pinnacle of health, but yet they're truly overtrained. And so these type of mechanisms help us kind of make up for all the cellular metabolic changes that are potentially working against them. But like I said, to take that a step further, when I don't have the luxury of getting people into that protocol or starting way ahead, which you'd like to do, you've got these things called ketone esters, and I can put them right into ketosis immediately. So I could see a patient and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and I don't have to alter their diet. I don't have to do anything, and I can have them really concentrating on what we need. And that is a magical tool when you have something like that. And the fact that they actually, there's immediate feedback with that too, when you're able to utilize something like that. And then, meaning, ketones, nutritional ketosis like this that I'm suggesting, exogenous ketone esters, have not just an effect on what we're trying to do by decreasing inflammation, which it works tremendously well, by the way. And we can go through all the mechanisms, but and it all relates to all of this COVID stuff we've written about. But you're doing that, but at the same time, it has an effect on the brain, has an effect on the gut. And it's amazing what these athletes will tell you, like, Doc, what did you just do to me? It's like, I need to know more about this, because I feel like I'm on. I feel like an athlete can tell you a lot about their brain and a lot about their bowels. And they're very sensitive to these things. And when you can affect changes radically in that, you've got the buy-in, and then it's an amazing journey with these people, because they come back to you after you fix them, and they want to know more about, well, what can I do more nutritionally? I have this nutritionist, maybe you could work with my nutritionist. It depends who they come with as far as their agents and all of that. But if they really separate themselves, and that's the best part of it I like, is they get engaged, they get interested. And so the ketone ester has kind of taken the place of the intermittent fasting and does a much better job at it too, I would say. But I will also tell you that I'm a big fan of rotation. And I really believe in, as long as I've been in this world, I see, the body also adapts. And I like actually going from stages of using ketones for 3 months, maybe 6 weeks, 3 months, depends on the scheduling, and then go into a fasting type of process for another 3 months. Or, I like to change it around. I like to take advantage. This is far beyond this discussion, but I take all the great parts from, like, the Mediterranean diet, the keto diet, the carnivore diet, the paleo diet. You just take all those pieces and you utilize them, and in conjunction with, intermittent fasting or ketosis, a ketogenic diet, or ketone esters, and then you really got something. So That was, again, long-winded.
No, I like it. I mean, there's something to be said, the beauty of variability and what you talked about. I mean, if you bake in some seasonality, right? For example, it's summer right now. There's blueberries that are in season, right? I mean, it seems silly to me if you're metabolically flexible and you exercise to ignore blueberries so that you can be in maximal ketosis, right? When they're in season. So anyway, I'm with you in that regard. I think it's great to have that flexibility. And then you hit on a wonderful point that the commercialization of products, sometimes people like their blinders go up and they have these BS detectors and they say, oh my gosh, whatever. But you hit on something that's very unique. And this is what I often talk about is products help spark that conversation to make further lifestyle change. So the athlete, if you were to say, hey, go on a ketogenic diet to an NFL linebacker, they'd be like, come on, dude, like really? But if you give them the ketone ester and they're thinking clearly, they're able to see plays form in the huddle, like then they're gonna be like, okay, now I get it. So people poo-poo products because they think, oh, people are selling me something, but they help create that conversation. And I love that you recommend that, because I often recommend ketones to people as well, if for nothing else, to get them to feel what it would be like if they also change their diet and to have that on demand. Before we spoke about 30 minutes ago, I just took the ketone ester, about a shot of it, about 15 ml. So I always do these before podcasts. I still intermittent fast. I eat a low carb ketogenic diet, but you get a little bit of I would like to, consider that you get a nice mental boost, little clarity attribute there. But so I think it's really interesting. Now, getting back to the COVID thing, we now have a lot of these kind of retrospective follow-up studies looking at outcomes, increased disease severity and metabolically inflexible, obese, and all that sort of stuff. What kind of mechanistically gets you really excited about either the ketone esters as a tool, or in conjunction with the ketogenic diet in terms of helping critically ill patients and possibly as a preventative strategy when it comes to this virus?
So this is where I believe it's been a tremendous opportunity to bring the awareness of what we've known about what ketone esters can do. And that is how they influence the absolute efficiency you need in metabolism to deal with any viral pathogen or bacterial or fungal, you name it, it's here now, it's COVID. So in a nutshell, what the biggest thing that ketone esters do is they bring in this process of where the cell needs to produce these things called reducing equivalents. And it's something called NADPH. And NADPH is it's all about transferring electrons. And basically the bottom line is your cells produce these really great antioxidants like glutathione, catalase, superoxide dismutase, hemoxygenase 1, glutathione peroxidase. They're all antioxidants that you need to survive that are very important in fighting off disease, fighting off pathogens like these viral infections. Let's just keep it simple like that. Well, in order for those antioxidants to be functioning, you need to have something that is working to transfer electrons back and forth as they go around to reduce oxidative states, basically. Then just consider oxidative states. Too much oxidation produces free radicals, and free radicals cause disruption in cells. And that's what viruses are looking. That's how they replicate. That's how they go. They take advantage of a cell by wanting those conditions to hijack the cell, basically. So if we improve the cell's ability to adapt to the virus, to produce more NADPH, game over. You're winning right off the bat. And there is no, let me say this again, there is no metabolic equivalency for a substrate compared to a ketone ester that can instantly change NADPH like that. And that is That's a fact. And we're able to utilize that, the fact that it can reduce these antioxidants in a fashion where your cell has just been overwhelmed. That's what the virus wants, to overwhelm the cell. So we're just giving the cell the ability to say, no, not happening today. We're gonna protect this cell, and that's really what happens. And there are all these other mechanisms of like improving inflammasome reactions and utilizing other anti-inflammatory pathways like specific to the lungs. It's interesting that, you know, your lung cells, you have these alveolar epithelial type 2 cells that are very, very important in producing like surfactant, and they produce their own antibiotic, your own antimicrobial. Actually, it's an antibiotic that you make. It's called LL37. It's a cathelicidin, but it's very important specific to this COVID, because you make an antimicrobial, an antibiotic that can go after this virus. And the virus is really smart in creating havoc, and it turns off that mechanism to produce it. Well, this utilization of the ketone ester keeps those alveolar cells viable, because they need so much energy to make this. If you can imagine, they're producing surfactant, they're producing antimicrobials, they're producing anti-inflammatories and antioxidants, so they need a lot of energy. So what the virus wants is that it wants the cell to depend just on glucose. It doesn't want that extra energy or that fatty acids can produce and that ketones can produce. So it really comes down again to the choices. The virus makes the cell choose glucose, and then it wins, because it turns off the immune system that way, and it turns off these alveolar cells. And that's how people get into problems with breathing and ARDS and all these things you hear about that become potentially mortality issues, you know, once you lose that battle with respiration. And so we're really I think on the cusp of, again, you've got a nutritional supplement that can be a game changer. And so we're really excited that we've had an opportunity to get this paper out on the, it's the first paper written on truly the metabolism of what these ketone esters are capable of. And in conjunction with some other papers that have come out, it just gives such a strong story for, hey, everybody wake up. We've got some answers here that can really make a difference in not just not just moving forward with this efficiency and preparing people. You know, let me take you down this road. Everybody's looking and waiting for the vaccination. Well, let me tell you something. This vaccination may or may not work. And, you know, to depend on a vaccine is just, in my mind, it's like, wait a second, what happened to preparing the cell to be prepared where you can do that? You know, you talked about obesity and the issues of how that sets people up for problems with surgery and this COVID. And the problem with obesity is that turns off the cell's flexibility, efficiency. And so even in those patients that are set up for this, if we give them ketone esters, we can turn some of those mechanisms back on and really give them protection pre-COVID or post-COVID. And that's a whole nother discussion about post-COVID, which I think are going to be even the bigger issues down the road of what you're going to see with depression, fatigue, and pain issues, and all of these things that happen post-viral that people aren't aware of, that this just seems to be something that I think will be, if it's anything like the COVID-1 that we saw back in 2002, 2003 from China, we have some great statistical data of significant problems post-COVID, and with post-traumatic stress, depression, fatigue, pain, fibrosis, cardiac fibrosis, liver fibrosis, all of these things that no one ever thought would be possible. And that's coming. So we really have a great, I think with all the knowledge we have, we can help a lot of people.
I think there's so much to unpack there. And I'm glad you mentioned the vaccine, because I think everyone's kind of hanging their hat on that. And I've been diving into the preliminary analysis or results from Moderna's outcome. And because here where I live in Kirkland, Washington, there's a big Kaiser group. And so I have some family that work there. And the side effects seem pretty severe, especially after the second injection. And whether or not that will offer sufficient protection for these metabolically inflexible people that we're talking about, provided that 70% of American adults are overweight or obese. We know prediabetes, diabetes is really prevalent. So there's that issue. But that doesn't really solve the root cause of the problem should another infectious disease migrate from China or who knows where else. So what I love what you're talking about here, Dr. Seeds, is it's upstream. A lot of people on the internet are talking about the free radical pathology and the oxidative stress burden in people that are infected with this virus. So then you hear about N-acetylcysteine, you hear about antioxidants, you hear about glutathione, but okay, that's like putting a Band-Aid. It's almost like an allopathic nutritional approach. But what you're talking about is changing the metabolic state really helps produce higher levels of these reducing equivalents that really change the landscape of the free radical pathology. So we always talk about on this podcast, like talking about upstream. And so this to me seems like a much more upstream approach to address the problem downstream.
Well, why, of course, and why, I mean, if you can induce the cell to make its own antioxidants, why the hell do you want to put antioxidants in your body that, number one, aren't getting absorbed, number two, are not even close to being as effective as the ones you make, because there's all kinds of isoforms. I mean, there's so much to this. And that's a whole nother, boy, you get into a whole nother area when you talk to, people are well-intentioned with using these antioxidants. And don't get me wrong, let me give you an idea though. There are times and there is a space where sometimes these antioxidants potentially can be helpful in a very short window as you're helping the body get back to where it needs to be. Okay. I'm not going to make an argument against that, but I will say, that, and this is actually, I run a society based on cell metabolism on it. And in the SSRP, our whole protocols are based on everything is upstream. It begins with the cell. And if you're taking care of, if you are addressing the issues of what the cell needs, like we just said, then the place of antioxidants, there is no place for them. And people actually get into trouble with overusing antioxidants because you need free radicals. Free radicals are signaling agents, and you need them for cell adaptation. So there is what we call a reduced state where people are using too many antioxidants and making themselves sick, and they don't even know it. So it really comes back to this issue of you need to be focused on giving your cell what it needs to make the right decisions. And that's all about efficiency and all about flexibility. And I think you're going to see a lot more in the literature now about metabolic flexibility and flux and the utilization of, I mean, it comes down, right? It just comes down to this again. My favorite thing to do is when I'm out giving talks and going through this education, it's certainly, there's all of these great things we can utilize, but you and I know what are the two best things you can do? It's exercise and nutrition. You just can't get around it. But how many people exercise? 5% of the country, 10% max, maybe.
Especially now, it's hard. Gyms are closed, right? So
it's really, everybody's looking for that pill that does what exercise does. It's never going to happen. I'm going to tell you that right now, not happening. but we can do things to, you know, to try to get closer to that. And that's where calorie restriction, intermittent fasting, ketogenic diet, all those things are trying to replicate exercise and good nutrition. And yeah, so I'm a zealot on all of that, and the things then that I could do to augment. And that's what I meant for you to, what I was trying to make you understand from my world is that's when I do these things to get people feeling better, and I use ketones to get them to a state of, wow, I need to know more. Well, that's when you can really engage these people to come back and really focus on exercise and really focus on nutrition. And then you've got a really great starting point for the rest of their life. And very few of those people deviate from that path once you get them there. That's really the most amazing and most satisfying thing for me when I see that transformation, and they become the zealots. And they're out there telling everybody, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this. That's really a privilege to be part of that and see that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it becomes intrinsic motivation instead of this external motivation that, you know, to lose weight for this, whatever that is, the beach, the summer, they realize how good they feel once they've made these changes. Okay, so there's some controversy or speculation coming from your peers, colleagues, I guess, in the family medicine, internal medicine world, where they say, look, there's nothing really you can do to boost your immune system. I had a client the other day, I do some one-on-one coaching, and it was a diabetic client, and their family medicine doctor just said, you know what, there's really nothing you can do. Just take your metformin and do your this and that. What would you say to that doctor if you could grab them and just be like, what would you, how could we convince, or I guess, why do you think some well-intended health professionals have this perception that the only way to address this virus is either wait for the vaccine, wash your hands, and put on a face mask, when we have all these other metabolic tools? What's lacking in their mindset?
Oh boy. I think you said it well. I mean, everybody's well intended. It's just if you don't have the information and you're not in that focus of, you know, I'm sorry, but nobody can argue about how we're trained in medical school. We're trained to take care of people when they get sick. We're not trained to prevent. We're trained to, okay, you're sick, this is what you got to do. It's just like an orthopedist. You have an injury, this is what I can do to fix it. We're not put in that mindset, and we're given all these great tools, but we're not given the tools to put them together beforehand and say, wait a second, you know, if we really concentrate on what we know about the cell, this may have tremendous implications in giving the cell the ability to be prepared. And you used an interesting comment, you said about upregulating the immune system. And I would like to I would like to rephrase it as, we're not upregulating anything, we're actually just improving the modulation of the immune system. And what that means is there's two parts of the immune system that get out of whack with any disease process. And what we're doing is giving the immune system better ability to modulate and move between what we call the acquired, adaptive, and the innate part of the immune system. And you know, that aspect is real important in how you go about this. But getting back to your point, it's really, I will tell you that there are many doctors out there that are back hard right now, relearning and reprocessing this process of what is out there to understand, because they're in the best place to really put it together. It's just they were never really given that opportunity to be in that preventive mode. And that's exactly what I do around the world with teaching the aspects of cells, molecular, the molecular aspects of medicine with the cell. And there are many, many doctors that are focused just on what you said all over the US and throughout the world. So we're seeing a big transformation. And I would just say that if you give those doctors the opportunity to understand and they want to understand, then I think there will be that acceptance. But if they don't want to understand and they don't want to listen, then, you know, how can you ever reach any midpoint with anybody if somebody isn't willing to listen to something and make critical decisions based on, you know, we all do the same thing. It's give me the information, and if it makes sense, then I look at it, and they should be the best equipped to say, wow, that really does make sense because I know this and this and this. And I would just say that that there are many out there that are really focusing on this. And in fact, I think this has changed that viewpoint for many physicians out there that, okay, wait a second, this is just, something's wrong if we're really relying on a vaccination and everybody's waiting for something. And all I can do is send my patient home and say, hey, you know, just get ready, you know, hibernate. I mean, that has so many red flags as a smart, critically thinking, well, you know, trained, anybody, healthcare provider from any standpoint, nutritionist, therapist, you know, we can all make those good decisions. And I think you're just seeing more of it now where it's kind of coming out and people are seeking information, and information power, and you give people that power. So I hear you and I feel what you're saying, and you're right on the target. And it's just, you know, you just got to keep working with your people, and because you're doing tremendously good thing, you're really helping those people to, you know, in fact, maybe that doctor doesn't realize that those aspects, but you're making that patient better and more well equipped to not rely on the metformin in the future. And you know what, maybe that'll come to a point where the doc might recognize that and say, wow, you know, maybe we can back off this. What have you been doing? You know, that it's a tough world with all of that, you know, where we're at right now, but you're definitely onto something very significant. I agree 100% with you.
Yeah. Amazing. You mentioned information is power, and I know you gotta run here in just a moment. So I wanted to kind of, I echo that. I think that's really important. But if information is threatening the business model of lucrative businesses, it becomes sometimes interpreted as misinformation. We've seen that. I mean, we can go down the hydroxychloroquine route and all the censorship. So here you go. You guys are publishing papers, and you're going to do a clinical trial about a therapy that's really, I mean, all things considered, really affordable. I mean, if someone wants to buy exogenous ketone, esters, we're talking about a few hundred at most dollars a month. So there's going to be people that may not want that information to get out there. Have you thought about some of the potential roadblocks you might come across when it comes to that? And how are we going to convey this message without having it be flagged by the online media sites as false information and going against what the infectious disease experts say?
So that's exactly why we wrote this paper to start with, to give everybody you can't refute the science that we've put into this paper. I mean, I've worked with William Curtis and Patrick Bradshaw, I mean, two of the top biochemists in the world that started in this world with Robert Veach and worked very closely with him. And I mean, we've put together, and part of this is in combination with the U.S. Army. You know, the Army has known about ionizing radiation and how ketones have protected cells against radiation. I mean, there's no better model in the world than that, and it's been proven. So we put a lot of these things together in the paper that are undeniable. So we're giving that platform for all of us to move forward and say, okay, you know, and that's where you got to start. You got to start with the science. You got to get people up to speed and give everybody the opportunity to, again, I said, you know, to make really good critical decisions. And I think the biggest misconception from the medical side is this is that you're going to put people into ketoacidosis that are, which is a whole nother metabolic change that occurs endogenously. It doesn't happen when you give people ketones exogenously. You actually shut off fatty acid oxidation. So you shut off that ketogenesis internally that's promoted by ketoacidosis. So that doesn't happen. And so it's really about educating people to understand this, the significance of these ketone esters and how they can, how we can set this platform moving forward. And oh my gosh, we've had discussions all around the world with teams of people that are interested in, in pushing this message forward also. And it's just a matter of, it's just a matter of just getting going in multiple phases. And I think that's what the most exciting part of this, and to make it, I'm fortunate from the medical side to be working with a lot of forward thinking infectious disease doctors, pulmonologists, acute care medical docs that have already been utilizing these ketones and already utilizing them and making results in COVID positive patients with respiratory problems and patients that have been on the brink of intubation, and we've had tremendous success in what we've already known and utilized in our practices before. So it's just a matter of really, again, we want to validate what we know and get this out. So these clinical trials are really important for us to get this message so that so we really can make these changes, and having these having these the ketone product itself that is a true, that's a whole other side of supplements, is you get into things where, how can you really judge what's good and bad? And it's really, it is unfortunately, I'll make a statement most people don't want to hear, but I don't like, I think there's too many things out there that just aren't what they say they are. And when it comes to this ketone stuff, you can't mess around, and it's got to be perfect. And we're very fortunate to have that type of supply of a ketone ester like this that is right on target, and they don't accept anything less. And that's a hard thing to do, but when you have that and you've got that type of production of a ketone ester, it's really it's a very, very humbling thing to use and see people change,
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And I agree with you. Having been in the supplement business since 2006, I've seen so much malarkey and mislabeling, even in the MCT oil and MCT powder space. Yeah. There's all these labeling loopholes people take advantage of, and it's really unfortunate. But getting back to some of your acute care physicians and hospitalists that are friends of yours that have had success with exogenous ketones and keto esters, have you seen any censorship by them sharing stories online? Because we have seen, at least from what I've seen, a lot of people that have shared success stories. Sometimes YouTube will pull it, or Facebook will pull it for fake news, or fact checkers didn't. Have you seen any of that with your colleagues?
Yeah, absolutely. It's they're anything right now that's COVID related is probably almost everything's always taken down. I mean, that's just what's been happening. It's more so you'll see things that will stay up more so when there aren't really things, when you don't refer to it. You gotta, it's all about the language you use and how you can keep these things going. And that's been a learning curve in itself. But at the very beginning, it wasn't bad. And then in the middle, everything got removed. And now I think people are are a lot smarter in how they're presenting these things especially on, you see a lot of it on Facebook and Instagram, I believe that's what it's called. So, you got to be careful with that too. You always, I really get a little, I'm just with the dramatic changes you see quickly with breathing. It is you watch these videos of, the docs, we'll send videos back and forth of our patients because we want people, we want to see what's happening. And these docs will send you back things and you'll be like, oh my gosh, you show this and people are going to go, no, come on, that's just not happening. But it really is. And we have the mechanisms behind it. And I think that's the most valuable part. Actually, I just ran a course out in Denver. That was a live course and online course. And I had one of the physicians who's on the front line in Los Angeles, who takes care of, this guy is a worker like no other doctor. And he is out there taking care of COVID patients, and he got it himself. And we had to do some things to help him because he also has asthma. So that asthma was an added process that really, he was on the brink of intubation, and he had reached out and we got him some ketone ester sent right to him. He actually videoed everything. This guy's gasping for air, and then he shows all the changes, and he is able to come to my course. And he's been someone very, very close to the group. And it's amazing when you get docs that can share their experiences and then start utilizing that on the front line with what they're doing, which he's been able to do. And it's great. It's great to see that.
That's awesome. Yeah, Frank shared with me some stories about that. People on the verge of being hospitalized or intubated and taking ester and quickly changing course, which I think is remarkable. So Dr. Seeds, I really appreciate your time. And kind of in closing, so you're an orthopedic surgeon here in Ohio. You've already had 5 operations today. It's about 3 p.m. for you. Just kind of curious, just on a more personal level, what did you eat breakfast today? Did you do coffee? Like, what is because you have to be alert, very alert, because you're operating on people. What does your personal nutrition and exercise program kind of look like?
So that's really, so I mix a lot of things. Like I walk the talk, right? If I'm not walking the talk, then I'm not doing my job. And it's what, I mean, I'm all about, I'm very fortunate to be doing something I love, and I want to do it for the rest of my life. And so I'm very cognizant of, hey, I need to be efficient all the time. And so today, if you ask me, I toggle with my intermittent fasting. So today was an intermittent fasting day. And to break my fast, I break it with ketone esters. And then I go a little bit longer, and then I introduce a little protein, and I do drink coffee. And today is a training day later tonight, actually, for me. And so I mean, I'm very cognizant of the things I do to improve the efficiency of my body. But I will tell you, I adapt really quickly, so I have to change, and that's why toggling of like where I'll do 3 days intermittent fasting, and then 4 days I'll be doing ketones, or I'll do 5 days straight of intermittent fasting, or I may do a weekend where I fast all 48 hours, or I'm always changing it, and I really believe that's the key. I really believe it. It's just like training, right? If we did the same training every day, or if we trained 7 days a week, or we did the same exercises, we get nowhere. So it's no different than training. So you have to be adapting to make that all work, and it makes it fun, and it makes it individual, and that's the beauty of all this, right?
Keeps it exciting. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So you're going to train later today, exercise. For you, what does exercise look like?
Wow, you're getting personal here, Mike. Huh?
Like is it weight training, or do you do HIIT training, or do you do cardio combination?
So I'm a big aerobic HIIT before resistance training.
Okay.
I like HIIT training for all of the things, nobody would believe this, but I only HIIT train for 4 hours. I mean, when I say 4 minutes, I go the max 4 minutes, and I can go climb a mountain. I can do anything because I'm aerobically as fit as the guy running 10 miles. And I've proven that, and the science proves it. But I'm going to tell you that stuff really works. But I utilize it before my resistance training. I'm very big on resistance training. And the reason being is I think the literature has absolutely gone to this place and will explode, that it really gets the stem cells ready for what they need to do in repair and recovery after resistance training. And I need every bit of that as being an older person. You know, I'm not as equipped as, well, I'm going to actually say I'm more equipped than the younger guys because I've done it all right. But
Nice.
yeah, so I do the HIIT training, and I don't do more than 3 times a week. Sometimes I'll just do twice a week, and then very intermittently I'll do 4 times a week, which you can't do too long.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then my resistance training varies, and I'm more of a free Olympic weight, strength. I mix strength, periodic conjugation, you know, all those kinds of things. I I do what I preach, and so depending on the athlete and what they need to accomplish, if it's improving their speed by 100th of a second, or a swimmer, or a hockey player, or you vary the training, right? And and I'm very big on the brain, and I'm big on meditation. I'm big on all the things you got to do to optimize the brain, because if you can't optimize the brain, you're not. All this means nothing either, you know.
Right. No, I agree 100%. West Side Barbell, are you familiar with some of those guys? Do you ever work on?
Oh yes. So I am a West Side. I I uh, I really like Louis Simmons. I really like the guy. Has been brilliant in what he's brought over from what he's combined with Bulgarian and Russian. All these things to really, the words I use, the conjugate periodization, is all of his stuff.
Yeah.
And I've just kind of modified it for me in my place of utilizing that approach, which I think is brilliant, and making it work for me. And that's where I think, I don't think there's one right program for anybody. It's really finding out, what works for that person, and then changing it. And that, the West Side guys have always been brilliant in how they go at it. And I don't go at it like, I have all the fun things, I have the yoke sled, I got the wheel ferrule, I've got the yoke bars,
Chains, bands.
bands. I mean, you
Yeah.
got to come into my garage. It's like, and there are no mirrors in my garage, by the way.
Nice.
Okay. But my garage is really, that's a whole nother deal. But my family, it's like my kids grew up. It was like, that was the family room, was the garage. It's like, that's where every decision is made, because it's like, that's where dad is when he's when he's home. But it was great because the kids, I've got amazing kids that have grown up. I never made them do anything, but they just kind of gravitated to it. And it's just so really, it's awesome, right? When you can work out with your kids and your wife, and my wife squats, my wife presses, my wife is amazing. And it's just, I'm very fortunate to have everybody that interested in their health.
That's so cool. Yeah, my dad it was in the garage, it was in a different room. And so I saw him doing that. And then at 13 and 14, we were all doing it. And here I am 20 plus years later, and we're still doing it. So I guess final question here, as an orthopedic surgeon, I'm a huge fan of squats and deadlifts, but if I post something on Facebook or Instagram, you see I call them Karens. They're like, hey, you can't load up your spine. How bad is squatting or deadlifting, assuming you're using appropriate weights for your frame and your training level? How bad is that to load up the spine?
So again, that comes down to the mechanics of what are you doing to prepare the spine? So you've got to be working on the posterior chain first. So if you're doing reverse hypers and glute ham type of exercises to strengthen the posterior chain, well, then you're doing the appropriate things to prepare yourself for squatting with heavier weights. So you got to understand those mechanics. And there are other exercises that you could utilize to also enhance that. But you could also take that. So it's just not understanding mechanics, and it's not understanding that. Okay, wait a second. I've worked on the posterior chain. The posterior chain's going to take, help me with that loading of the back. Are there extremes? Well, of course, but most people aren't going to those extremes. So if you do it right, there's nothing better, because you're doing all the right things to hydrate that disc space and to improve the facet joints of the spine. But I'll tell you this too, there's the alternative of doing belt squats, and I love belt squats. And I just bought a new. I was down in Columbus talking, and it was really just a quick story. I love telling stories. I had somebody who drove me down there. I said, "Hey, we're really close to Rogue here. Do you mind? Can we just go over here? I just heard they've got a new platform for belt squats." And he's like, "Yeah, I'd love to see it." And so the driver takes me over there. We go in there, and I just saw this thing. I said, "I have to have it." And I'm like, "How big is your car? Can we fit this in there?" And so
Get out. You bought a belt squat, put it in his car. Oh my gosh, that is amazing. I love that, man. I have a belt squat too. I have Matt Wenning's belt squat.
Okay, well,
A little different.
yeah, this is so Matt, yeah, boy, Matt Wenning, where there's an amazing guy and strong guy, and yeah, I can't. That's awesome. You're with the right people for sure there. Yeah, so this is just more of a, you're just dropping weight down as opposed to levering it. And it works. I love it. It's just, again, it's another alternative to rotating around, with your exercise. But I'll tell you and that's where the West Side guys come into they're the masters of the posterior chain. And that's the reverse hyper and the glute hams. I mean, nobody does those exercises. That's actually when I have my high end, all my athletes that come in, and all these other people that I work with enhancing their lives and bodies. I can't tell you how many reverse hypers I put into houses and garages in training facilities that never knew what a reverse hyper was.
Wow. Yeah. Good for you. That's amazing. Well, I have a reverse hyper too. So if you ever come to Seattle, you got to hit up the home gym, man. You'd like it. Yeah, I'm with you too. And it's funny. I mean, we talk about this equipment and people might be hearing us thinking, oh my gosh, they're spending all this money. But I found a majority of this outside of Matt Wenning's belt squat on either Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, used from CrossFit gyms that closed down or something like that. So you don't need to be a millionaire or order all this specialized stuff. If you just are diligent about watching for deals, you can find it. So yeah, amazing. Well, if I ever come out to Ohio, I'll definitely we'll have to get a garage workout in. That'd be fun. Talk about ketones.
Come, you're always welcome. And I have, my facility I have 900,000 square feet we're an Olympic training center. And I have the ultimate playground of everything. And, but I'm going to tell you, my garage is better set than that.
Nice. I love it.
Because it has everything. Hey, listen, I just want to take a second and say, I really, when I had a chance to be interviewed by you, I'm actually a fan of yours. And I really think you do some really tremendous communicating with people, what people need to hear. And my hat's off to you for all the good work you do out there. I think it's, you give a service to people in bringing them information that we don't do very well in getting that synthesized into what people need to understand. And what I really like about what you do is you do it very responsibly. And that's a really hard thing to do. So thank you for everything you do.
My pleasure. Really appreciate the opportunity. It was a fun conversation. I had no idea we'd talk about fitness and working out and all that good stuff. So Enjoy your evening and have a good workout, and really appreciate you coming on the show.
All right, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.